Greetings, scholars, and welcome to week 2 of BMG 230 online. Let's take a look at where we are as of today, Thursday, March 19th. As of today, we are at a total of 130 points from all of the activities from week 1. So if you look at your points in Blackboard, you're going to take your total and divide it against 130 to see where you currently stand. Many of you have more than 130 points because you did the extra credit. However, again, the measurable amount that we're looking at is 130. So you should always be looking at your grades to know where you stand each week. I will let you know what points total we are at. If you have done any activities from week 2, then you want to deduct those points from your total so you have an accurate representation of where you currently stand. Today, March 19th, is also the drop deadline. As you can see here on the syllabus, the withdrawal deadline is next week, so you want to pay close attention to those dates. But what's the difference between dropping and withdrawing? Dropping makes the class disappear, essentially. There is no record of it on your transcript. You're not financially responsible. No one will know that you attempted this course. If you choose to stay in this class after today, then this class will appear on your transcript, and whatever grade you have earned at the end of the semester is the grade that will show. So again, there is a point tally in the syllabus letting you know at the end of the semester we're out of 1,000 points. However many points you have is going to translate to a grade. If you again choose to stay in this class after today, then this class will show on your transcript, and whatever grade you earn will also be present. So withdrawing does not remove the class from your transcript. It does not remove your financial responsibility. However, it does protect your GPA. So the class will show on your transcript. You will still have to pay for it. But if you choose to withdraw, and you see the deadline there is Thursday, March 26th, then the grade, it will not show a grade. It will just show that you withdrew. It will have implications on your financial aid if you're receiving it. But again, dropping removes the class completely. There is no record of it. Withdrawing, only thing that it does is protect your GPA because you won't receive a letter grade. It will just show that you withdrew from the class. If you have any questions or concerns, you're not sure, send me a note. We can schedule a time to talk. I'll be happy to talk through it with you. Looking at our activities for this week, we have chapters 3 and 4 in your quiz. We have our first application-based activity. So be sure to look at the video on the home page and Blackboard as I walk through application-based activities showing you how it works. Of course, the one that I walk through is not one that you're going to do, but you'll get the idea. I strongly recommend that you read the chapters first, then do your Learn Smart, then do the application-based activity, because it is going to be asking you questions based off of the concepts from that chapter. And speaking of which, I'm looking at the average amount of time it's taking for you to do the Learn Smarts. I know this is the first week. There's a lot going on. I hope everyone is well. But make sure you're reading before you do it, because if you read and you take notes, it drastically reduces the amount of time that you spend doing your Learn Smart. So just some tips trying to help you work smarter, not harder. Let's take a quick dive into chapters 3 and 4 and see what we're going to be learning about. Looking at this week, we have chapters 3 and 4. Chapter 3 is the organizational environment and culture. So it's looking at external environment, internal environment, things that you can control, things that you cannot control. So just touching on a few things here. Let's see. So your external environment, all relevant forces outside the firm's boundaries. The most important thing to recognize here, these are things that you cannot control. You need to be aware of them, but things that you don't have any influence on what happens, or you have very little influence is a good way to say it. All organizations operate in this macro external environment. So some good examples here are the laws and regulations, the economy. Again, these are things that you should be aware of, but you cannot control. Technology, demographics, social values, trends, what's happening in the world right now. Other areas that managers need to be concerned of is the competitive environment. This is going to include any rivalries, Also includes substitute and complementary products. And when we're thinking about substitute, this is something that can be used in place of your current product, or let's go to the next slide. A complementary product is something that is going to go well with your product. So something that will enhance the value of it or increase the use of your product. So from a manager's perspective, it's you're thinking of how do you keep up with this? How do you maintain your competitive advantage? How do you maintain your position within the market? So these are three main things that you can do as a manager. Environmental scanning, searching for and sorting through information about the environment. So just keeping up to date, understanding what's taking place, what's changing. Competitive intelligence. So information that helps managers determine how to compete better. That could be a strategy. It could be a physical location. It could be expanding into different markets. How do you maintain your current position, or even better, how do you enhance or increase your market share? And then lastly, benchmarking, the process of comparing all an organization's practices and technologies with those of other companies. How do you compare? When you think about comparison, if you think about the automobile company, especially for luxury automobiles, you take the BMW 3 Series. It said that is to be the benchmark for all luxury vehicles. What does that mean? That means that every luxury competitor is comparing themselves to that model and seeing, well, how do they stand up? How do they measure against that particular brand? That's how they consider themselves successful. Lastly, thing I want to touch on, chapter three, is going to be this structure here. So we're looking at decentralized versus centralized organization. A decentralized organization is one that's said to have very few layers. It's able to adapt to changes quickly. They make decisions quickly, compared to a centralized structure, which is going to be very bureaucratic, many layers, many levels to the organization. You think of a top-down flow of information, and so those organizations are said to be slower when it comes to making changes or making quick decisions. They adapt. They do not adapt as quickly as decentralized, more dynamic organizations do. Looking at chapter four is all about ethics and corporate responsibility. This is something that every manager needs to be concerned with. Ethics is considered the gray area of business because it's so subjective. It's very difficult to find ways to combat these issues head on because you don't know what these issues are. We are faced with new dilemmas every single day, and it's very hard for a company to control the actions of their employees. So, what can they do instead? They try to influence the actions of their employees. They want to make sure they understand what's expected of them, how they should respond in certain situations. So, let's take a look at a few things here. So, ethics, situation, problem, or opportunity in which an individual must choose among several actions that must be evaluated as morally right or wrong. Let's take a look at those two terms there, right or wrong. Who determines what's right? Who determines what's wrong? Does everybody agree on what's right? Does everybody agree what's wrong? That's why this is considered the gray area because it's so subjective. I may view a situation and come out with a different response. You may review it and come up with a completely different response. Doesn't mean that I'm right and you're wrong. We just interpreted the situation very differently. I think this next question is a very interesting one. People argue that ethical codes are just for show and in reality do little to deter unethical behavior. Do you agree? Personally, I do not agree because we face so many ethical dilemmas these days that companies are taking it extremely seriously when it comes to their code of ethics. So you're seeing a lot of companies instituting new positions. Starbucks is a great example of it with the ethical dilemma they faced last year, where they shut down their stores for, I don't think it was a full day, but maybe a half day for training. Employees had to go through 6 hours of training among ethics and diversity and sensitivity. So these things, companies are taking this issue very seriously. Two things here: the moral philosophy, principle, rules, and values people decide use in deciding what's right or wrong. Again, you see how subjective that is. My values, my beliefs, my education, my experiences are going to choose me to feel one way. Yours may choose you to feel a different way. And then lastly, universalism, the ethical system stating that all people should uphold certain values that society needs to function. This is saying that that there should be a code there. Universalism is saying that we may not agree on everything. However, there are some things that we probably all feel a certain way about, maybe like torture or murder, crimes against children. And so that's what it's saying, that people should uphold certain values, that everyone should agree that these things are wrong and we should not do them. So, what do you do if you're faced with an ethical dilemma? There is no one right way to coach you or guide you, but here are some things that the book and other books would agree with this as well. Things that you can do to help you come to the best decision. First, understand all the moral standards. So, what does your company believe? What's the values? What's important there? The impact. So, is the decision that you make, is one party going to be disadvantaged versus another? Is it fair to everyone? Is it someone being denied their rights? So these are questions or things that you should ask yourself to help you come to a decision. So you'll read more about ethical issues, corporate social responsibility, which speaks on, do companies have an obligation to their communities, their employees, investors, suppliers? Should they help out? Should they be environmentally friendly, etc.?